Good evening, Tumbleweed Radio. You're listening to Tumbleweed Radio. I'm Tumbleweed Radio. This week on Tumbleweed Radio, we're going to do things a little differently. I know. 3 episodes in and you're already changing direction? Well, yes. But in my defense, we haven't really established a direction yet. Hell, direction is a hard thing to come by these days. Maybe that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. Find a bit of direction. Or maybe that's just kind of a cool, cryptic-sounding thing to say that makes me sound more deep than I really am. Either way, you'll have to roll with me. Today, I'm going to play you a little audio journal of sorts, an entry from an anonymous Warfano County resident who totally isn't me. We've masked their voice for privacy's sake, but remember, it definitely isn't me. Let's call him Bob. Now, I'll be honest with you. Bob is a bit of an eccentric. This piece is a bit experimental. I kind of think that Bob doesn't really know how to make podcasts. Nonetheless, I think that this piece has something to say about the Warfano County experience, or at least one Bob's version of it. And so without further ado, I present to you episode 3 of season 1 of Tumbleweed Radio, Homecoming.
Driving in my car. I can feel the wind in my hair as I zoom down I-25. It's a bitter cold day, but good for driving. I'm just passing through Pueblo, and I've been on the road for almost 2 hours, which can only mean one thing. I've spent the last 45 minutes flipping back and forth between heating myself to the point of discomfort with the car heater and freezing my tuchus off opening up the windows. What can I say? I like the fresh air. Besides, everyone knows it's better to be warmed than warm. Goosebumps rise on my arms and shoulders, but this time it's not from the cold. It's from the sight in front of me. There they are, the Spanish Peaks. I've caught a couple glimpses of them on my way down today already, but it's been from an extreme distance, and they have looked tiny. Coming around this bend, I can see for the first time that they are tall and magnificent. Oh, what is it about these two mountains that fills me with electricity like no other? I've been driving past mountains all day, some even taller than the Spanish Peaks, but this is the first time I've been so affected. Standing side by side and perpendicular to the Rocky Mountain chain, these peaks radiate incredible symbolic power. Could they be twins? Or lovers, hand in hand? They've been called many things, but my favorite name is Oaxatoya, the breasts of the earth. I hurry on down the road, and they disappear again, only to reappear later in even more splendid glory. As I crest the hill just north of mile marker 69 and pass into Warfano County, I audibly relax, breathing in the vastness of the valley laid out before me. God, this area is beautiful. I've been extremely fortunate and have been able to travel some in my life. I've seen a great many beautiful places in this world, but Spanish Peaks country still strikes me as one of the most fantastic. Certainly it is one of the most unique. Perched right on the intersection of tall grass prairies to the east, dusty desert mesas to the south, and high rocky wilderness to the west, the landscape here is as beautiful as it is diverse. I'm heading home from Denver after finally finishing college, having stayed on an extra quarter later than I was planning. I've been living with my grandma and my cousin Sarah during the last 4 months while I finished up. They're wonderful folk, and I'm so grateful that they took me in and let me stay in their basement. I've saved a bit of money while not paying rent, and I've become the closest I've ever been with them over the course of the last few months. I feel a hot flush of shame knowing that I won't be able to keep up the closeness with them now that I've moved away. I never can. I'm always focused on who or what is immediately in front of me, like some kind of tunnel vision, only I'm not organized enough to make that work, and I mostly just fail to make time for all the people I love. I've been talking with my parents for the last few weeks about coming down and working for them at the newspaper. They're doing pretty well these days, running the biggest newspaper in the Tri-County area. They're busy as hell and could use a little bit of help, and there's even a beat opening up that I can cover. Fuck you, fly. I don't want to have to kill you, but you're ruining my sound. quiet. I'm excited, but a bit nervous. The last time I was truly living in Walsenburg, I was a whole other person. I've had some bad times, sowed some division in my family. From the year 2015 till 2018 or so, I was really struggling with my mental health. I lashed out. It's taken years to mend the damage I did to my familial unit. What will it be like to live with everyone again? Also, I've been toying with the idea of developing a podcast about our area. I'm not quite sure how to go about that. I just got a degree in painting and another in German, but somehow I don't think either translate intuitively into sound design. And I hate my voice. God, I hate my voice. I think it's because my bottom lip is so big. It's heavy, so sometimes I drag it up lazily, forming strange blurs of words. And my lip slaps together louder than most folks. Does everyone hear my mouth noises all the time and no one is telling me? Anyway, they're open to the idea, so I'm on my way home now to live in their basement for the foreseeable future. On my way home to the Spanish Peaks. I drive past the Huerfano Butte. This old pile of rocks is what the county was named for. Huerfano, the Spanish word for orphan. Strange name for a county, eh? There's a few old volcanic plugs scattered across this area, but this one stands alone out east of the highway. A lonely soldier on watch duty, scouring the plains for bandits. There's a legend surrounding the buttes in this county. Some say that they are the age-hardened forms of old giants who used to roam this land, back when the thunder and lightning gods still called these mountains home. Across the highway from the butte is my family's old ranch house. Pink adobe, with a carport jutting out that was always filled with clutter and flat roofs that I used to run around on. That's the house my mom grew up in. That's the house my grandpa died in. That's the house that was ripped out from my family when... I shake my head free. That's in the past now. No sense in dragging up old wounds. My family has moved upwards and onwards. But if I ever have the money, and if I ever get the chance, I'm gonna buy that ranch back someday. Right around the butte, there also stand 4 tall white wind turbines. These things are cool, if you ask me. A lot of folk hate the turbines, saying they spoil the view. My feelings are quite the opposite. I love the way they sprout up from the vast plains east of I-25, like enormous porcelain flowers with gentle curves and great spinning pinwheels for petals. I think they look sci-fi, or like something from a Salvador Dali painting. I wonder what it would be like to be suspended in a basket by a rope from one of those blades as it spins and spins. Driving on, I signal and turn off the highway, exiting into Walsenburg. The north side of town is much more disassociated than the side south of the Hogback. Some folks do live out here, but there's a ton of wild space in between buildings, and it generally feels like an extension of the truck stop. Passing through the path through the Hogback, I consider what I know about this rock wall. This feature is one of the sub-parallel dikes, which are not directly associated with the formation of the Spanish Peaks. It formed some 20 million odd years ago when the stretching of, It formed some 20 million odd years ago when the stretching of the plates which formed the Rockies literally tore fissures deep within the crust that were filled in by magma which hardened. Over the course of many millennia, topsoil and dirt was transported away by wind and water, slowly lowering the surface of the earth. Inch by inch, the altitude fell. Eventually, after a few million years, the top of the hardened magma deposit poked out of the dirt, forming a low path of stone. Nowadays, that little stone path stands between 20 and 40 feet above the ground around it, a 3-mile-long spine of rock still partially buried, a natural wall. Sometime in the late 19th to early 20th century, engineers blasted it and built a road right through it. On April 28th and 29th in 1914, some 100 miners on strike stood their ground at the top of this ridge against the Colorado National Guard, shooting back and forth for 2 days, defending the tent colony of 1,500 people behind them from another atrocity like the Ludlow Massacre. Today, It is strange to imagine something so brutal happening in Walsenburg. We used to be booming, but since the coal dried up, the town has been quietly dwindling. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 people living here these days, and most folk love the quiet. Granted, we have our fair share of suffering, of violence and addiction, and the folk of our area have more than a fair share of poverty. But this place is a far cry from a battlefield. This is still a real community. People know each other out here. There's history here. And you want to talk about culture? We got that in spades. God only knows how long people have been congregating around these peaks. Centuries, millennia maybe. Nobody really knows. There are huge and wonderful hints of the peoples who have lived here throughout the years, though. On these mountains you can find petroglyphs, symbols carved in stone by American Indians hundreds of years ago. You can find arrowheads even older, and you can find prayer trees which the Ute people manipulated, which have grown thick and sturdy, but bent, bowing toward the cardinal directions. Even today, there is a ton of culture. You can find music and parties and dancing. And the food. By God, can you find good food here. You know, my grandpa Sporletter was going to George's Drive-In every week, almost right up until he died. He always ordered the same thing. A single patty, red chili smothered cheeseburger. I myself am partial to green, the way God intended. To me, Wolfram County has come to represent my shelter from the outside world. In the fast-paced world of 21st century America, life in the city means getting tugged around in every direction. Between work and school, and my art and my rents and my relationships, I felt that over the past 5 years, I've barely had time to breathe. Denver is great and all, but everything is fast-paced and new. The culture is shifting and forgetful. Down here, people aren't antiquated, but they still have one foot in the past, for better or for worse. How many people have lived here? What kind of things happened to them? What kind of stories did they tell? What wouldn't I do to find out? Wolfram County is doing its own thing now, but the winds of change are blowing. No matter how high up you go, they always find you. I aim to do some digging down here, learn as much as I can about these parts, and to share what I find with you, dear listener. I think you'll find it's a crazy ride. I pull up on the west side of my family's house, a large white bungalow built in 1907 with maybe a quarter acre of yard in total across the front, side, and back of it. I take a deep breath, feeling the crisp January air fill my lungs. There are a few bird calls in the air, but the only real noise pollution is the faint sound of the highway about a mile east. Home. I suddenly become aware of the huge weight that has been lifted off of my chest. I don't even realize that it's building up when I'm away, but I always feel the most enormous sense of relief when I arrive. Grabbing my bags, I lock my car and head up the red stone stairs and go inside.
Wow. Great work, Bob. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in this week. Keep your eyes peeled and your ears wide open. There is more coming. I'm Conor, and I'd like to say thank you I'm Conor, and I'd like to say... I'm Conor, and I'd like to say thank you, sincerely, for listening to Tumbleweed Radio, a podcast from the World Journal.